Hey there, I just saw the movie Smallfoot. I guess I'm one of the few, like, when I saw the trailer for this, if you hear any sounds, by the way, my wife's watching TV, sorry. If you've seen any of the trailers for this, a lot of people were saying, like, oh, it didn't look very good, looked very lame. I actually thought it looked kind of funny, sort of in that Hotel Transylvania vibe. And I saw it was Warner Bros. That got me excited because I love the movie Storks. Of course, I love the Warner Bros. Cartoons, Looney Tunes, and everything. And this movie, it's complicated. It's not bad. I'll just say that. It's not by any means a bad movie. But it starts out as an unbelievably run-of-the-mill kids film. Not awful, not bad, just very run-of-the-mill. It's a musical. It's about these Yeti that live up in the mountains and they don't know what's below, and they have their funny way of doing things that involves a lot of slapstick, and maybe half of it is funny in terms of the slapstick, and then in terms of the humor, it's like every 10 jokes they do, one will hit. But they're fast. They're not, like, insultingly bad. There's not, like, a lot of fart jokes or anything like that. They're just not super funny. Or I shouldn't say it. They're clearly aimed for little kids. And kids can watch it, and they can see how bright and colorful it is. They can get into a lot of the motion and stuff, how quick it is, the funny faces they make. Even the design I didn't get. They all have these pear-shaped heads with the same eyes, and I didn't like that. But, so it's running this very standard formula where you think you know who the bad guy is going to be. You think you know every step it's going to take. You know, sort of the quirky outcasts say there's more to what they're saying and there's a whole world out there. And sure enough, one of the Yeti comes across a Smallfoot, which is this person, and travels down, journeys out, goes to explore, and finds one, finds a person. They thankfully can't understand each other, which I thought was clever. They have to make a connection even though they can never, ever understand what the other is saying. I thought that was really cool. But he brings the person back up, and the person is like this TV, animal expert that used to be like really, used to be this big nature expert, but, it's fallen on hard times. So he thinks, getting a Yeti, would be a big, big deal. So he goes with him into the mountains, and the turning point where it just immediately becomes more interesting is when he's going to show all the Yeti the Smallfoot. He's going to show the human. He gets up there and goes, everybody, from the dawn of time, we have wandered. And you think you know where it's going to go. He's going to go on and on. They're not going to see the Smallfoot. Nobody's going to believe him again. And it's just going to be that story where he has to convince everybody, and nobody believes until the very end, and we should have believed you, and it's just stick to your guns, kind of thing, and truth will prevail and stuff. But then he takes the human out, and everybody sees him. And from there it gets really, really interesting. It suddenly becomes this big story about sort of what do you put your faith in? What do you put your trust in? There's kind of these conspiracies going on, but even that is not what it sounds like. There is kind of this falsehood that's being told by the higher-ups, but when they explain why, and they show the backstory and everything, the people you thought were going to be set up as the bad guys really aren't. And the main character suddenly has to make a choice that's very identifiable. Even though you don't kind of agree with them, it's like, well, what would you do in that situation? And then it kind of gets into this climax where, he sort of turns his back on some people, but again, you know why. And some of them go and they try to explore, but then that can be a bad thing too. And it's kind of going for the people are bad thing, man equal bad. I hate those stories too, like the Ferngully stories and everything. But then they kind of have fun with that too, and they play around with the idea that, they just see each other as monsters, and, maybe there's something they can do about it, maybe they can't, but there's that difference in the language where, they can't, totally communicate. I mean, they can a little bit, but, if they see each other, they're gonna be afraid, and it suddenly got really interesting. What's funny about it is that at the halfway point, it really is like it becomes a different movie because the songs stop. a lot of the jokes stop, and suddenly, like, the characters are really talking. They're not sort of just their quirks. Like, you know, when he comes across sort of the group of people that think there's a conspiracy and don't trust, you know, the laws and the faith and stuff like that, you can tell, okay, well, he's the big goofy guy. Oh, she's the weird paranoid one. Oh, that little guy, he's the one that shouts all the wacky insults, and he's really annoying, by the way. But they're not in it too much, and even they sort of play actual supporting roles where they actually do kind of go in and help and have interesting conversations, and it just suddenly becomes a very different film. So it goes from a passable kids film to a legit good family film, right at the halfway point. So it's tricky, because I wish it was like that the whole way through. I wish or at least the first half had better jokes throughout. A lot of these jokes and the animation and the slapstick feels like 10 years old. But like I said, 1 in every 10 jokes gets a laugh and was legitimately funny. Even the slapstick, I think when he finally does go down to the man village, whatever it's called, when he finally goes down the mountain and he kind of keeps tripping and he gets rolled up in the snowball and in between his two mountains, like the slapstick gets legit good, like classic Wile E. Coyote Looney Tunes funny. And yeah, it's kind of like when the Yeti and the human finally meet each other. That's when kind of the real character development starts too. And I felt bad because I have kind of a funny story. His mother comes in with her 2 kids and sits them down. And the songs in this movie are not that bad. Some of them are actually very pretty. But then some are pretty stupid. Like the first one just kind of seems like a knockoff of like the Muppet movie song, you know, where they're doing the big production and everyone's turning around dancing. Or the movie The Muppets, the one with Jason Segel, you know, that first song, it almost seemed like a satire of that. And then there's another one where the human sings Under Pressure, singing about his life, like what happened to him, to the song Under Pressure. And this mother just got up and said, "You guys stay here, I'm gonna be in the movie next door." Just walked to the next movie and came back as it ended. And on the one hand, I thought that was really funny, but on the other hand, she missed a legitimate good second half. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't kind of know where she was coming from, because it really sets itself up like it's just a kid's film. And then suddenly it gets really interesting, combining elements that we've seen before in a lot of, you know, in monster human movies where either humans are bad and monsters are good, or monsters are bad and humans are good, and kind of throws in a few twists with it, even to a point where there's a scene at the end, you know, it's gonna have some kind of happy ending, but at the same time, you don't know how. And there's one scene that legit, I won't give it away, but it's a scene that the human has with the Yeti during the chase scene. And I legit kind of dropped my jaw like, oh my god, when this one scene happens. I think people watching who have seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And again, you know it has to be a happy ending, but it legit surprised me when the human does something, and I legit went, but again, you see how it works out. But what I like too is that the main character in this, it has kind of all the setup of the liar revealed story. You know this story. I hate this story. The one where one person tells a lie, everyone believes the person, so they love him or her, and then suddenly the liar's revealed and everybody hates them, but then he or she has to go and like rectify everything and somehow has to make it better, and everybody loves that person again. It has that setup, but you know, even kind of that third act where somebody has to betray somebody else, but again, it's very identifiable. You actually kind of get into the choice he's making and why he's doing it, which I really like. And again, it's one of those situations where you identify because you're saying, well, if I was there, what would I do? It's tricky. And they make it kind of a time crunch too, where you have to make these decisions fast. I thought it was pretty clever. And even kind of the weirder song sequences, there's a rap done in the second half. I think that's like the only other song done in the second half. is actually done kind of well. It is done very intimidating. It doesn't quite feel... It starts off feeling a little phony, like, oh my god, are we doing this? But then it kind of turns into this big, threatening production, and it's shot cool, and the colors are neat, and it seems very intimidating, and it surprisingly kind of works. So yeah, but the second half of this, I don't think is great. I don't think it's phenomenal or anything, but it's a legit good family film. And maybe, I don't know, maybe what kind of makes me appreciate the second half even more is because I so thought it was going to go the direction that the first half is setting up, because it was so playing it by the numbers, and then suddenly the second half gets really interesting. And I wish the first half was either as interesting or was a lot funnier. But with what we got, I think this is pretty good. So if you're going into this, if you have kids, take the kids to see it. They'll love it. They'll enjoy the slapstick and the comedy of the first half, and they'll be invested in the second half. I saw kids running out laughing and quoting lines and stuff, and they're really excited. The chase scene, they're reenacting it. So kids, I think, will love this. For the adults, give it a chance. Don't be like that lady that went into the next theater. Unless it's like a really good movie next door. I don't know, but no. You pay for a movie, see the movie. But yeah, give it a shot. At the halfway point, it gets legit interesting. And it, like I said, combines a lot of familiar elements that you've seen kind of from lesser family film, or even lesser... I shouldn't say lesser. Just kind of these cliches have been done a lot. But they take these elements and kind of pick different parts of it and put it together and make something kind of new, kind of interesting, or new enough, I should say. It was enough to keep my interest and enough for me to say, okay, I'm invested, and I want to know what choices they're going to make. I want to know how they're going to get out of it, and I want to know how they're going to get their happy ending, because everything they're setting up, it's like, well, okay, it's going to be difficult to, to wrap this all up. And it's nice for a kids film too, because it is very anti-authority, which I kind of like, but in a smart way. It's not like stick it to the man, because the man is a man, a person, which I like. And they make it look like he's going to be a villain, but they don't. They actually make this a legit person. You understand where he's coming from, and I think that's important, because a lot of anti-authoritative films, especially in family films, just make them look bad. There's one bad guy or a lot of bad guys, and there really are no villains in this. That's what I was really, really happy to see. That at the end of the day, it's like, okay, there was nobody is dropped off a cliff and his reign of terror is over or anything like that. It is legitimately identifiable and understandable where these characters are coming from and why they're doing what they're doing. And they come to a reasonable outcome at the end as well. So I'm really happy about that. So I would say this is actually a very good film for kids. Even though it starts off as a very standard film for kids, it suddenly gets really good for kids, and it turns into a decent enough family film, I think. So, if you're an adult and you're wondering whether or not to see it, I would say give it a chance, just with the, knowledge that it's going to start off clunky or standard. It's going to start off very standard, and it's going to get better. It's going to get stronger as you watch it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Go tell me what you think. I'm actually really curious if people like this film or if they see it as too corny and lame and sporadic. But by the end of it, I was really glad I saw it. I thought it turned out pretty good. So that's about it. I'll see you next time. Take care.